For a long time, I was not what you would call a deliberatist. What do I mean by deliberatist? Well, I'm coining a word here um, to to talk about or to designate a certain type of a certain philosophy about what's happening right now, what's been happening in the Western world, particularly over the course of the past 70 years in particular. But what's been happening in a more accelerated way over the last 2 years in particular. And you look at the immense damage, the immense cultural damage that has been done. Now, don't get me wrong, the West was not a perfect place by far 70 years ago. We were not living in utopia. There were things that needed to be changed. There were things that needed to be challenged. Um, so I'm not one who's saying that we've that there was that things were just all good and there was no cause for concern, or there was nothing that was worthy of protesting, or nothing that was wrong that needed to be made right, because I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that out of this time period where there were no doubt many righteous people with many a righteous crusade for justice of one kind or another, that this period was used by certain people who had leverage, by certain people who had influence, by certain people who had more or less taken over the institutions. And I know to some people this sounds paranoid, uh, but I don't know what to say to that, because I've made, if you want to say it's paranoid, I guess, it's like if somebody is really deliberately out there doing harm to somebody else and you point it out, does that make you paranoid, or does it make you aware? So anyway, let's start with the sexual revolution, with the invention of the pill and the introduction of trends which eventually eroded monogamy and led to the dissolution of the family in certain communities. The extreme dissolution of the family. You know, talk about the civil rights movement as a righteous crusade for justice. In many ways, it was. But what has happened to the black family since the 50s and 60s? Not good things. It's not in good shape right now. And as somebody out there, I think I can't remember I can't remember his name right now, but there's somebody out there with a website who points out. I think it's, is it blackgenocide.com or blackgenocide.org or something like that. Points out the number of black children who have been aborted since the legalization of abortion, and that didn't happen by accident. That was a deliberatist. Uh, um, that's the result of deliberate and focused behavior, focused influential behavior. But, at the same time, the trend of trendy anti-whiteness, which we have all around us now, soaking us, saturating us, that also has been a deliberate act from the same source. Um, but all of that other thing, all of these other things aside, let's just stick with the sexual revolution and the damage it has wrought in the Western world, uh, and the pathologies that it has given birth to. The ways in which, where children can no longer rely on stable family life, can no longer rely on having two parents who will stay together and who will love them and protect them and do right by them. Um, all of that went out the window with the sexual revolution. Uh, and I believe that it was at bottom a deliberate act. I think I've said this before, so I don't know if I'm saying anything terribly new. Um, I mean, do I have documentation or paperwork in front of me? I don't have documentation or paperwork in front of me. There is anecdotal evidence that the those in control, the elites, if you want to call them that, were planning for this to happen for various reasons. There's the more prosaic reasons, like the CIA encouraged women to go to work because now you have more, with men and women both having to work. You have more money to be taxed, more taxable incomes, and if both mother and father have to work and the mother can't stay home and take care of her children in the traditional uh, model of things, traditional model of the family, if that can't happen, well, then you've got vulnerable children who are, as it uh, as it has been pointed out, more open to propaganda, um, and less liable to to be self-sufficient, less liable to be uh, family oriented, less liable to have faith. The erosion of faith, which has taken place over the last 60, 70 years, is also a big part of the problem, although it that was a problem. That had been a problem for maybe a couple of centuries. But I'm saying all of these things are connected. And, I'm sure that for a lot of people, it was, let's start taking the pill. Let's not stigmatize premarital sex or even extramarital sex or whatever at any and every kind of what used to be stigmatized as wrong and perverse. Uh, let's lift that stigma and let people uh, give people freedom, sexual freedom. Well, sexual freedom is about the only kind of freedom that they've been interested in giving us. They've wanted to take away just about every other kind of freedom that had been available to us prior. to the sexual revolution. But now, for the past 2 years, we've seen how truly arbitrary uh, the these invisible rulers, these unelected elite. Uh, we see. I mean, they've shown, they've bared their teeth to us. We've seen just uh, true um, true tyranny, true draconianism. We've seen mayors and heads of state and governors just see fit to do things that are plainly not in their power, not vested in any kind of constitutional power. Nevertheless, because they called this emergency, this over this bullshit pandemic, uh, and suddenly, protocol changed. And before, maybe I should make that whole thing into a separate video. I think I will, because I don't want to get too sidetracked on that right now, because there's much more that can be said about it. So I'll make that into a separate video, material to be covered in a separate video. But my main point in all of this is, the accidentalists will say, those who are against against this predominant uh, movement, who are against the lockdowns and against the forced closure of businesses and against taking away people's livelihoods and all of the atrocities they've committed, against taking kids out of school and making them stay at home and go to school on via Zoom or Skype. Um, all and all of these things that they've done that have been so immensely disruptive to normal life, and that have been so immensely damaging, um, not only to the economy, because it's not just about the almighty dollar, it's about people's livelihood. It's about people being able to work, you know, to work the kind of jobs that either they have to work in order to survive, or that they've chosen to do. But again, 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago, suddenly those who were deemed inessential workers, and I mean that's eugenics by the back, via the back door, as far as I'm concerned. When you talk about inessential workers, what are you really saying? You're saying some people's jobs are important and others are not. What are you uh, what are you saying via stealth? When you say that, what you're basically saying, some people are important and should be, their livelihoods are should be preserved, and others are not, and they can just wither on the vine and die. So it's been pointed out in many other places, the kind of deleterious effects that lockdowns have had, particularly on children, and but not just on children, on adults too, and the suicide rate and the degree to which things like self harm um, have have increased, and other negative, unhealthy behaviors, um, all the misery that it's produced. Did they not know that this would happen? It's my belief that those who were really pulling the strings knew exactly what was going to happen, and that's why I call them deliberatists. They knew that it was going to have these kinds of deleterious effects upon people, um, but they didn't care. They didn't care because, in a very real sense, they are not human. They do not have the capacity uh, for compassion. And it's not just touchy feely stuff. It's not just hippy dippy stuff. Like, it's also prudency, or prudence, I guess you could just call it. They didn't. There was nothing prudent go about in March of 2020 to just shift immediately, to just to just not to say, okay, we need to take some measures, but let's let's also try to preserve our way of life and make this as least disruptive as we can. Let's, everything's a trade off, so let's find a balance between preserving health and safety, but also preserving people's financial stability and preserving the economy. No, no, that was not how it was handled. And I didn't vote on that. You didn't vote on that. Nobody voted on that. It was just decided for us. It was just decided for us. And it's still just being decided for a hell of a lot of people in the world, even now. I mean, I'm glad that things are getting better in a lot of places in the world, but there are other places in the world where it has not gotten better, where it has in fact gotten worse, and where the agenda is still pedal to the metal. I don't know why they chose these particular places. Maybe because people were more malleable there. Maybe because they were less afraid of armed rebellion, since these were places where they'd taken away people's arms for the most part, regular citizens. That is, but anyway, just sticking to the facts, and to bring this all to a close right now, because I don't want to get too rambly, any more rambly than I've already been. The main thing that I want to emphasize is deliberation. You know, there are those who would just say, oh, well, they didn't see the consequences. They did all these things, but they didn't know it would result in so much uh, so much pain and suffering and heartbreak and cultural chaos um, and that so many people would be hurt by this. But hell, if I believe that, I think they knew exactly what they were doing and exactly the effect that it would have on people. And I think we have every right to be as pissed off uh, about this, um, because this was a crime. This was a crime. And we were victimized by it. And some were victimized more than others. I wasn't. I wasn't victimized the way a lot of people were or have been, but I was. I can tell you, when my son's 8th grade soccer season got canceled, I was pissed off about that. Because I knew he enjoyed being on the soccer team, and they were taking that away from him, and I hated them for that, and I still hate them for that. Um, so that's a little thing, but little things are still significant, and there are people with plenty more to be pissed off about than that, like the ones who got the toxic sludge injection and had terrible side effects. Anyway, a lot of different directions I could go with all of that, but let me bring this all to a close right now and just say it's been deliberate at the highest levels. It's been a deliberate campaign of infliction of pain and suffering and terror and heartbreak and heartache. Uh, and we must hold them responsible. That's all.